Hello, this is BlueStar, Defender of Equestria, and this is my Afterthoughts review of Amending Fences. Oh dear, this episode will always be more than just another episode to me. Oh dear, this is going to be very difficult because this video is almost in a way going to be in two parts. First, I have to describe something that happened after I've saw this episode, and which does in fact relate to the episode and was very difficult to me. And the second part will be the actual Afterthoughts review of this episode. And I'm going to tell you this in a way as briefly as I can, because in some ways I don't want this to be a big deal, even though it kind of was and kind of wasn't at the same time. But the short answer is I basically ended a friendship because it was too painful for me to be in that friendship any longer. That hurt so much in the first few days of me doing that, and the short answer and the short story here is we just don't get along. It's like we're almost polar opposites of our personalities and everything. It's like we were matter and antimatter. It's like you put us together and we both just go bang very loudly. We just had these big, huge arguments that almost ascended into almost like flame wars with each other. And the good news is that he never really got hurt by those arguments and everything, but honestly, I kind of did. And I often got hurt by those things, because some of these things that we were arguing about, they mattered to me. Some of these things are the very things that make me who and what I am, and those things just simply hurt a lot. And it's like, I just didn't want to do this anymore. I don't want to have these kinds of arguments. I don't want to have these kinds of fights. It's like, this is just hurting me. And I did try to tell him several times that, these things hurt me. I tried to quote-unquote kiss and make up, because I figured, I probably said things that hurt him and everything. But it just, eventually, I just blew up at him and I was just mean to him, and he sent me a video with basically replying, it's like, wait, what's going on? What the heck? I hurt him. I feel really bad about that. And then I basically said to him, I think it's best that we just, say our goodbyes and just walk away. And, I did explain to him that, the things that we were arguing about hurt me and everything. And he was very understanding and understood, and he respected, and even everything, and he even said that here's my Skype name, if you ever want to contact me, I will still consider you a friend and all that, and I'm very appreciative of that. And by the off chance that you watch this video, I am very sorry that I hurt you and everything, but in the end I think it probably was better, at least for me, to be honest, that, I'm not in contact with that person anymore. And that made me feel terrible, though. It's like the best thing for me to do was to end this friendship because it was hurtful to me. That always hurts, to be honest. And I almost feel like I betrayed Equestria. I betrayed the very things that I want to stand for and that I want to fight and defend. And this is part of the reason why I'm telling you this, is because, in a way, I almost need to ask for your forgiveness and hope that you will allow me to continue to fight and defend Equestria. Because I still want to stand and fight for those things. I still want to stand and fight and defend friendship, love, community. But at this time, I didn't do that. I did the opposite of what this episode was trying to do, and that was especially painful. And I hope that you can forgive me, ponies. But of course, no one should remain in any kind of relationship that hurts them. That's, of course, doesn't make any sense to do that. And I think in the end, this was the right thing to do. It wasn't the nice thing, it wasn't what, in a way, I really wanted, but in the end, it was the right thing to do. And the good news is that, there's no real hard feelings between, me and him. Everything's in a way cool. I could go probably tomorrow and amend that fence and we could be friends again. But again, I think it's probably better that we're not. And again, I feel horrible about that. And the reason why I'm telling you all this is because, A, I don't want to hide from this. That in a way, I want to turn and face this thing and not be afraid of it. And I don't want to be afraid to simply have other people know it as well. I want everyone to know so that I am not a hypocrite, that I do stand and fight for friendship, love, community. Sometimes we have to do what's right for us, though. That's unfortunate. That's why I defend Equestria, because in Equestria, there is always a way to work things out. There's always a way. But sometimes in the real world, it's just better to just say goodbye and just walk away. The other reason I'm telling you this is because I think it helps me to understand all sides of this particular episode. Because, yeah, when I realized that I hurt him, that was the worst feeling ever. That was awful. It's like, what have I done? Why did I do that? No! And I felt horrible after that. So, yeah, I could understand why Twilight, after realizing that she was such a horrible friend to all her friends, realized, oh my gosh, what have I done? It's like she wants to go and take care of it now. Not tomorrow, not in an hour, now. It's like, we're gonna go right now to Canterlot and fix this. I could understand why she did that and everything. And, you know, it's an interesting dilemma, to be honest. Because, yeah, Twilight didn't intentionally try to hurt her friend, and she, in a way, did have a larger mission at stake. I kind of think that that is true, that she had a larger mission, but at the same time, you know, at that moment, Twilight was like, no, I'm reading this book. You know, I could have sworn I remember this. I think that really wasn't until later in the library where she learns that, oh my gosh, Nightmare Moon's coming back. Then that's when the larger mission started. But yeah, I mean, I still like this whole thing, though, because it shows that, you know, how your actions can, you know, even when they doesn't make a big deal. It's like, oh, I just won't go to this party. It won't be that big of a deal. But, you know, for Moondancer, it was a big deal. For Twilight to not show up, that really hurt her. That hurt her in a way that was almost life-changing. It is an interesting problem that they have in this episode, is that it's in theory only been a year since all this has happened. It's not like, oh, this was your friend in middle school / high school, and now you're in college, or you're out of college, or you're an adult. It's like, this only happened like a year. Even so, that's still more than enough time in a way for this to still be relevant and everything. But yeah, I mean, I understand how Twilight feels. But I also understand how Moondancer feels. It's like, yeah, it's like, I don't fit in, I don't belong. And, you know, I tried to be friends with people. I tried to put myself out there, and in a different situation, you know, in middle school, you know, it's like one time I made a mistake in class, and, you know, everyone laughed at me, and after that I just shut down. And it's like, I don't want to put myself out there. I want to, you know, hide in a corner and not let myself get hurt. So I understand how she feels, and it's like, I don't have anything in common with them anyway. It's just like, can I go home now? I understand, and, you know, and everything, and that's why this episode was just so powerful to me in a way, and this is why this episode will never be just another episode of My Little Pony. To those who've, in a way, not experienced these kinds of things, who, you know, who've never hurt a friend by mistake, or have never been hurt by someone else, which, frankly, I don't think there's too many people. This almost happens to everyone one way or another. Yeah, you may not get this episode. You may not think this episode's a big deal, but to me, it's like, no, I understand this episode all too well, and it's just so hard and difficult for me. And again, especially considering the situation that happened after this episode, it really made this episode hard. It almost made me want to not go back and watch the episode. It made me want to just, in a way, shove it in a corner, and almost in a way to a point, shove MLP in a corner for a while. And it's like, this is too painful for me to go and watch. But of course, I can't do that. And of course, we shouldn't do that. You know, this is another case where I have to turn and face that thing that I'm afraid of, because otherwise I'm just going to be continually afraid of it. And that's just the only way to defeat that fear, is to simply turn and face it. And that's exactly what I did. And the good news was that the episode was, you know, actually okay at the second time I watched it. It was okay, and there were some kind of fun things in the beginning, and it's actually, for the first part of it, it's actually kind of fun. It's okay. I mean, on a lighter note, the interesting thing is that when Twilight gives this big, you know, heartfelt, I'm so sorry, please forgive me, I'm so sorry for hurting you, and it's like, then, you know, her friends just laugh at her and says, it's okay, Twilight, we know you, you've done this to us before, in a way. It's like, we expect this from you. Ouch. That was kind of harsh, but, you know, it's unfortunately true, and that's the first way that someone might respond to, to someone like Twilight going and saying, I'm sorry, I want to make up for this. It's like, no, Twilight, it wasn't a big deal. Everything's cool. Unfortunately, Moondancer is the other way that people can respond to this. It's like, you hurt me. You're not going to just be able to throw me at every party and just make it all right. You hurt me more than you ever do and everything. And that was hard. That was, I think, in a way, probably the hardest moment in the entire series so far, because that scene was not pulling any punches. She's literally on the ground crying, and in some strange way, I like this. That this isn't a typical MLP episode where we just throw a party and we sort of try to brush this problem aside. It's like, no, we did that and it flat failed. It didn't work. Because that's not the problem, and this is a difficult, painful problem, and you're not going to be able to just throw a party for someone, and in a way, even just saying I'm sorry isn't enough. Those wounds are too deep for these kinds of things. But yeah, Twilight had to go up to her and say, I'm really sorry that I hurt you so badly. It's like, hurting you was like the worst thing I've ever done. That made me feel the worst after everything I've been through and everything. That hurt me the most, is what Twilight needed to say. I mean, in a way, when I think when Moondancer says, I never knew how much I needed to hear you say that, it's kind of a bummer. It's like, because she needs to hear Twilight say, I hurt you really, really badly. I mean, but at the same time, that is what she needs to hear. That Twilight acknowledges that she hurt Moondancer a great deal. That's what she needs to hear. It says that, that she simply acknowledged it, and now she's here to try to make things right and make it up to her and everything. That was cool. It was really, really hard, but that was the way that needed to be resolved and everything, and it was just hard and difficult. But this was a hard and difficult situation, but it all gets resolved. It all gets resolved in a very realistic way. That's what I liked about this whole thing, is that it isn't just simply My Little Pony trying to just blow these problems off, as sometimes My Little Pony sometimes does. But, they're trying to face this problem head on and treat it realistically and deal with it realistically. And I think it accomplished that very well. But now moving on to some other things in the episode, there were some fun things here. There were some also awkward things here as well, like the dinner was certainly awkward. But again, that's in a way kind of realistic, that, you're trying to force this pony to be friends with these ponies that she hasn't really seen for a while. It's like, it's just going to be awkward and like, how are you? It's like, oh, did you know that, she works in the Canterlot Palace? Yeah, that's pretty much exactly the way that would have worked out. Yeah, and I didn't realize it at the time that, it's like, Moondancer is literally, the opposite of Twilight in a way. It's that she's like the opposite color schemes and everything, and she's even the exact same model as Twilight, just that her colors are different and everything. And again, this is another case of, this is what would have happened to Twilight if the events of Friendship is Magic had never happened. And, but the good news is that, now that Twilight is the Princess of Friendship, she's come back here to resolve that in a way, quote unquote, help herself to, make friends and everything. And I do have to agree with Dr. Wolf, is that, Spike was the quote unquote the initiator of all this, but he didn't mean it as an insult. He meant it's like, well, okay, you weren't such a great friend back then, but you're a good friend now, and that's all that counts, is what he was trying to say. But of course, Twilight realized, oh my gosh, I was such a horrible friend, I gotta go fix this, and I gotta go fix it now, and everything. And that was the right thing to do, and everything. And this was certainly a very good episode. I think it definitely accomplished everything that it was trying to do, and it certainly resolved something that we didn't think that we needed to resolve. We thought that wasn't a big deal, but we learned that it was. For Moondancer, that was such a huge deal, and, that Twilight really had to go and fix this. As the Princess of Friendship, she had to go fix this, and she had to make it right. And the good news is that she did make it right, and everything was cool in this episode. I mean, some people will probably treat this episode as just being, another episode with a pretty good lesson in it, but for me, it'll always be something more. It'll definitely be something, that I can connect to and I understand in a lot of ways that I was not expecting to understand. So, and I think this video is getting long enough as it is, so I think, again, this episode accomplished everything that it was trying to do, and it may have been hard, but there were a few things here that were fun, and it was certainly an interesting thing, and it was, I think, a very worthwhile episode, and in some strange way, I still enjoy it, and I do like it, and certainly because friendship did prevail in the end. I'm sorry that, in my case, that didn't happen. But you never know. Maybe one day friendship will prevail again. But anyway, I did like this episode, and it was good, and it was very hard, but it was a very worthwhile episode, to say the least. And I'm just glad that an episode in a way like this was able to be made. And in a way, great to go, M.A. Larson. You did yet another great episode, and I'm looking forward to hopefully things being a little lighter and a little more fun next week, because this definitely touched me in a way that I never expected that it would. That's usually a sign that the writer did their job. Way to go to M.A. Larson. So that is the end of my Afterthoughts review of Amending Fences. This is Blue Star. Stay strong and pony on. Blue Star out.